Let me ask you something. When you look at the Constitution of India today, do you see a finished document or a story still unfolding? Because what we call the Constitution is not just a legal text. It is the result of nearly 200 years of political experiments, struggles, negotiations, and let's be honest, a fair amount of trial and error. The journey did not begin in 1947. It began much earlier, when a trading company slowly started behaving like a government. The Regulating Act of 1773 was the first signal that something has changed. For the first time, the British Parliament stepped in to control the East India Company. That's where centralized administration in India quietly took its first breath. But here is the interesting part. Every reform that followed was not a gift, it was a reaction. The Pitt's India Act of 1784 created dual control, separating commercial and political functions. Why? Because chaos forced clarity. Fast forward a bit and you reach the Charter Act of 1833, which did something bold. It made the Governor General of Bengal the Governor General of India. In one stroke, legislative power was centralized. But power concentrated in one place always raises a question: where is representation? And that question started getting louder. By the time we reached the Indian Councils Act of 1861, Indians were allowed into Legislative Council, but only in a limited, almost symbolic way. It was like being invited to a meeting but not allowed to speak freely. Then came the Indian Councils Act of 1892 and later the Morley Minto reforms of 1909, which introduced the idea of elections but also something far more controversial: separate electorates. Representation increased but unity took a hit. That's the paradox: progress in one direction, complications in another. Now pause for a second and think, was this evolution linear? Not at all. It was messy, reactive, and deeply political. The turning point came with the Government of India Act 1919, which introduced diarchy in provinces. Some subjects were given to Indian ministers while others remained with the British. Imagine being given responsibility without full authority. It was bound to create friction. And friction did what it always does: it pushed the system further. Then came the heavy weight: the Government of India Act 1935. This was not just another reform, it was a blueprint. Federalism, provincial autonomy, a bicameral legislature. Many features you see today have their roots here. But here is the twist: even this act was never fully implemented as intended. So, when independence finally arrived, India did not start from scratch. It inherited, adopted, rejected, and refined. The Constituent Assembly stepped in, not as passive receivers of history, but as active shapers of the future. They took the lessons, both successes and failures, from these colonial laws and fused them with global ideas. Fundamental rights drew inspiration from the US. Directive principles echoed Ireland. Parliamentary democracy reflected the UK. But the soul? That was uniquely Indian, shaped by diversity, struggle, and aspiration. And here is where the dynamic angle kicks in. The Constitution was not designed to be rigid, it was meant to evolve. Amendments, judicial interpretations, changing political realities. These constantly reshape it. What started as a post colonial framework has now become a living document, adapting to new challenges like technology, social justice, and governance reforms. So, the real question is not how the Constitution was made. The real question is, how does a nation continuously remake its Constitution without rewriting it? Because every amendment, every court judgment, every debate in Parliament is part of this ongoing story. In a way, the historical evolution never ended, it just changed its form. And if you look closely, you will realize this is not just about the past, it is about understanding how power, representation, and accountability keep redefining themselves even today.